Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Soulivity Live. My name is Brian Westley Johnson, and I want to welcome everyone from around the world. I want to begin tonight's show with a rekindling of our memories about a great philosopher. His name was Plato, and this Greek man was born around 428 BC. And most of what we know about him comes from his writings. Like, for instance, we know that he was a student of Socrates, and he was also a teacher of Aristotle, and that he explored many different subjects, including things like justice, equality, aesthetics, political philosophy, theology. He even studied the philosophy of language. And though he lived over 2,000 years ago, his thoughts about the world around us still live today. One important statement by Plato was on how we as humans learn and assimilate information. He said, all learning has an emotional base. Now, this simple statement set off a chain reaction around the world at that time and a debate on whether or not emotions really were that important in everyday life. Now today, however, in very recent history, what we have learned is that these emotions are not just important, but vitally important to life and living. So tonight, we have back on our show our relationship experts, Jesse and Melva Johnson, who are going to enlighten us about what psychologists call emotional intelligence, or EQ. This thing is very important, and it has influence on everything we do, say, and even dream. So Soulivity community, let's welcome Jesse and Melva back to the show. So let me get them online here. There they are.
Yay!
Hey, hello, hello, hello.
Hello, philosopher. I was taking notes.
Right.
You guys know all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, maybe we need to interview him.
That was pretty
So,
good.
wow, thank you. Thank you. So don't forget, everyone, we want your questions during the show. So don't be shy. Just post your questions directly on this live feed, and we'll get to as many of them as we can during the discussion. So let's get this party started, y'all. So Dad, you and I have talked a lot about emotional intelligence before. And so I wanted to go to you first to ask you about, what does emotional intelligence mean in today's society? I mean, do you have like a personal story maybe you can share?
Yeah, I do have a personal story I can share. I think it'd probably be helpful to kind of define what we mean by emotional intelligence. Right. So emotional intelligence simply means that I am aware of my own emotions. And we're talking here about feelings. What am I feeling in this moment? And also about the emotional feelings of another person. And the reason why, as you said a moment ago, one of the reasons why it's so vitally important to know your own feeling state as well as that of your partner is it helps you to be able to communicate and relate to each other in ways that are positive as opposed to making assumptions that are totally incorrect. Okay? The story I'd like to share is that years ago when I was about 12 or 13 years old, my buddies and I, wanting to look like we were men grown up and all that kind of thing and make a positive impression on the girls, we decided we would smoke cigarettes.
Wow.
Okay. Now, nobody told us, though, that cigarettes don't always have the most pleasant smell. So what we thought we tried to make a positive impression could actually be a negative one. But anyway, this particular day, my dad happened to come outside near the garage, and he caught us back there smoking.
Uh-oh.
So he chose not to, and here's one example of emotional intelligence. He decided not to embarrass me among my buddies. He said, you know, let's come inside and let's talk about this man to man.
Okay.
So he took me inside, and he got out an old pipe that looked like it had never been cleaned.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yep. And then he went over and got a cigar, one of those old cigars, you know, maybe 20 years ago. Somebody gave it to him because they had a baby or something of that nature. So it was old and stale and all that kind of thing. So he broke the cigar in half, stuck that end of it into the pipe, and told me to light up.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Yeah. So which I did. So he carried on an adult conversation with me. Well, son, you know, how are things going? You know, I'm glad to see you growing up and so on. So that cigar and that pipe made me so sick I didn't know what to do.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, I got, you know, I was nauseated and heaving up and all that kind of stuff. But you would think that after I had gone through all that experience, I would never smoke again. Well, that wasn't the case.
Mm.
It took 20 years later, maybe a little more than 20 years, for me to give up cigarettes altogether. And in fact, it was a long time before I told my family, especially like Melva, you have been smoking. No, because, you know, she and friends and kids and, you know, a lot of people was trying to get me to quit smoking. They tried to do that for years. But my doctor told me, so one day you're going to decide to make a quit day and you're going to quit. So I'm not going to bug you until you have quit, and then I'm going to acknowledge you for what you've done. So anyway, that's my little brief story around making change and so on. So I guess I'd like to kind of maybe in that story, let Melva jump in here too, was that people change when they get ready to change. And even though we love and care for our partners, and we want them to not only live but also be well.
Yeah.
And maybe in our own mind, we also know that it's something we ought to do, but we haven't decided to do it yet.
Right.
And so trying to force other people to change because we know it's good for them and good for us, rarely if ever works.
Yeah, you know, it's that, you know, when you talk about that story and you talk about, you know, how we don't change until we decide to change.
Right.
And my guess is that begins with raising the level of our own emotional intelligence, getting in contact with our own feelings about our own behaviors and our own actions, and then deciding what we want to do around that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You know, Mom, in terms of, like, let's take the story that Dad just talked about in terms of, you know, when he was smoking. And because you were on the other end of this.
Absolutely.
And so you had to go through your own process around allowing Jesse to be an individual and be in his own space, as well as honoring where you were, right? Is that connected in with what we're talking about in terms of your own emotional intelligence as well?
Yeah. I was clear about where I was, wanting him to be healthy and alive and very much into a healthy lifestyle. And people will say many times, you have to accept me the way that I am.
Mm, okay.
And so I didn't do a very good job, I'll tell you that. Because I worried and I did everything that I knew how to do to present evidence to him, how important it was to change. And when I did realize, I kind of let it go.
Mm,
I sort of let it go.
gotcha.
And I kept focused on the bigger picture. It took me years later to learn another tool about how to deal with it a little more effectively and a little more gracefully, but I didn't have that tool back then.
Right.
So I was concentrating on the impact it was having on me and the impact it was having on you and Paul too, because you would be affected if you got sick, if you died,
Right, right.
And that kind of thing. So I learned how. I did get to the place of accepting the fact that he was going to do it when he was going to do it under his terms, and actually on his time frame. However, when I got to the place where I just backed up from putting so much energy into it,
Mm-hmm.
something interesting happened.
Okay.
I didn't give up the goal trying to convince him to change. I just stopped actively trying to convince him to change. So I remember this day as clearly as if it was yesterday. And the four of us, you and Paul and Jesse, myself, we're having a family meeting. And during the part where we were reporting successes, Jesse said, oh, and my success is that I haven't had a cigarette in, how long had it been? I don't know if it'd been 2 weeks or a month or.
I thought it was about a month.
Yeah. And I said, you what?
Yeah, I think we all were like full stop. What did you just say? Yeah.
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 And then Jesse turned around and said to me, and you didn't even notice. So maybe that's what surrender looks like in terms of, you let go and let God, or maybe just get tired and start focusing on a bigger picture or just letting it go. I think that's what I did. So part of the process of taking care of myself while I was concerned about him is to, at that time, I didn't know that if you worry is a prayer. Just like whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you focus on is like a prayer.
Right.
So letting go of that prayer of worry and just, and actually, I really did let go of the God. And if he never did change,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wasn't going to divorce him. So it was going to be something that I would have to live with.
Right.
So
Now, go ahead. Finish that thought, because I do have a question.
Yeah. So the emotional intelligence for me was to honor where I was coming from and also honor that he didn't have the same values about that.
Right.
And to get to the place of just sitting.
And people that I love. And so I made the decision, no, it's time to quit.
Now, I want, we've been talking about, even before this, about how emotional intelligence works in this kind of relationship. And I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about those effects. But I wanted to get your take on emotional intelligence, period, in terms of even if you're not in a relationship with someone, why it is important for you to understand what it is and how to improve it. Why is that important?
For me, it's important to know that other people are not you. And to get to know the other person in terms of who they are and what it takes for them to tick and function in the world led me to, and actually I learned it in the training that we did to become a Imago therapist. And that is, instead of practicing the golden rule, giving people what it is that I would want, I took the time to get to know people, to find out what it is that they wanted. So, which was many times different for me. Also, when people had a different perspective in mind. So if it pushed my buttons, then I knew that I needed to step back and take time to hear them out, understand where they were coming from without judgment. So that meant with compassion.
Gotcha.
So that would be the person at the grocery store. That would be the person at the cleaners. That would be the person who who's helping to maintain the car, anybody, because people show up differently.
Right.
And sometimes when people show up what feels like a negative way, I try not to take it personal. I try to find out what's really going on beneath the surface.
Now, Dad, how does emotional intelligence improve our lives? I mean, what are some of the effects of growing it?
Well, for me, one of the primary things it does is expand my world.
Okay.
Because if I don't do that, if I don't make the attempt to reach outside of myself and connect with other people and understand what they're feeling, what they're wanting, what their goals are and aspirations and so forth, I can just stay pretty much stuck in my own little world. And I don't move very far, because by expanding my my intelligence beyond myself, then my world is bigger and brighter and more comprehensive. So that's one of the most important things it does for me. And in addition to that, I would say the persons who do extremely well in life are those who have mastered emotional intelligence, because of their ability to be able to relate to other people, and other people perceiving them as being a caring person who cares about them. So it has a very positive impact on your level of success.
What about you, Mom? How do you see that? How does emotional intelligence, how does it improve our lives from your perspective?
Yeah, so one thing is we all have different values and different goals and what have you. And many of us want the best for other people. And what we see as what could be the best for them is not what they see. And so one thing that has been helpful for me is to really get to know a person and get to know them for where they are. And so, you know, that takes taking time to get to know them, and then finding out what kind of support that they want moving in any direction that they're moving in.
Right.
And to be a support person, again, finding out what it is that they need, rather than me not forcing, but making sure that I know more than they know about what it is that they need in the moment. Which expands a support system. I remember one of the things that came up over and over again years ago when we worked with Arnold Patton was two things. He said a lot of things, but two that apply right here. And that is what you focus on expands. So if you focus on the connection and what's going to make a wholesome connection, that makes a difference. And the second one that I forgot just that quickly, when you focus on expands, I'll remember in a minute.
Okay. Well, I've got a question for you then, too.
Okay.
What do we do to improve it? I mean, what are some of the techniques to improve our emotional intelligence? Because there's got to be a way. I was reading something about like an emotional quotient that was way back, maybe 20 years ago when that term was coined.
Yeah.
Is there a way to raise our emotional intelligence over time?
Yeah. So mine would be being in relationship with people, whether you're just beginning to know them or if you've been in relationship with them for a long time, to approach that relationship with a beginner's mind, meaning with the goal of really getting to know the heart of the person. I will say that I'm having a little difficulty with some of the stuff that's going on now. However, that is a goal. That is a goal. And that I learned a long time ago that most behavior, I almost said all behavior, has a positive intent. But you really put on a detective hat to find out what is the positive intent behind whatever is going on in the moment. Whatever a person is saying or doing, there is a positive intent. They're trying to accomplish something. So if I'm curious about that and stay out of judgment, then I think that has more of a positive impact.
Wow. What about you, Dad? What are some of the techniques that we can do?
Well, you know, for me, I had to first learn and understand my own emotions. Because until I understood my own emotions, it's always difficult for me to understand those same emotions in other people, which relates to what you were saying, Melva, in terms of being able to connect with a mate or a partner or someone special in your life. So by getting in touch with my own feelings, my own emotions, one of the things that I was able to do was to articulate those emotions and those feelings and what I needed more far better than without doing that. So, so getting in touch with your own emotions so that you could be empathetic enough to relate to another person and what they're feeling. So I'll just add one other thing.
Okay.
It's also, while you're in this learning process about learning about other people's emotions and how they're feeling and so on, you may guess, you may not always be correct. So the thing to do is to ask them, what are you feeling right now? I want to understand what's going on with you so I can better understand you, what it is you might need and how I might support you.
Wow.
And back to positive intention, we all have an impact on each other in whatever circumstance we're in. And asking myself in terms of something that I've said or done, what kind of impact do I think I just had on this person in this situation? A positive impact or a negative impact? And which keeps me kind of out of self-absorption and being in touch more with the person that I want to connect to. But connection is the key. Because for me, that's what it's all about. Having as many positive connections with people that you care about. Casual connections, as well as the intimate and family and social connections.
Now we know that one of our most important connections is with our partner. So, you know, describe for me, and maybe Dad, maybe you can start this one, and maybe Mom can add some commentary. When two people have raised their emotional intelligence, what does that look like in a committed relationship? What's that dynamic kind of look like?
Well, for me, it's the ability for both persons to be able to talk to each other in a way that is respectful each for the other.
Mhm. Wow.
Where they can say, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm needing. So you talk about, in touch of knowing yourself and being able to communicate that to your partner, changes the whole tone of the conversation, because up until that time, what people do is they spend a lot of time arguing with each other, and also saying, you know, I'm right, you're wrong, and so on. So they never are able to really understand each other, and then from that space be able to make decisions that are in both persons' self-interest.
Wow.
That's
Sounds like you're describing that people fall into fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's true.
It's just pure survival.
Right.
And when you have a higher purpose for being together, because one thing that happened for us years ago when we decided to get married, we decided what our purpose was for this marriage, and that this marriage was bigger than the two of us.
Right.
And that we wanted to be able to not just contribute to each other and you and Paul and our family and friends. We wanted to be used as conduits to serve whoever God wanted us to serve. And so having a purpose, and then we also have a vision for, in terms of emotional intelligence, we both have a vision for what that looks like and feels like. And we try to stay on track with action steps, following through, actually doing the kinds of things that we're teaching the couples that we work with.
Right.
You know, paying attention to what's right, you know, showing up with a full cup so that we're giving from a full cup kind of thing. Did I say appreciations?
No.
Paying attention to what works and sharing appreciations.
Right.
Having fun.
Okay.
You know, we like to have fun.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Right. And then, you know, when there's things that has to be addressed, we go ahead and address them and get through them, you know, resolve them, dissolve them, or manage whatever, so we can be on track with that vision.
Now, what you're describing, does it just happen? I mean, you don't get to a level of emotional intelligence with each other and then everything's fine and you never have to do anything again, right? This is an ongoing process?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Wish it was that simple, but it's not.
But yeah, we remember the early days. Getting, you know, that's the other part about, you know, couples living together, couples married, under the same roof. Getting to know another person while living under the same roof together is probably the most difficult job that a person can have. What, you know, and when you ask your mate, your spouse, what is it like living with me? Be prepared to hear the answer.
All right. Okay.
And you do want to know.
Yeah.
Maybe not, but you do. Mostly you want to know.
But then after you've asked the question, and you may have changed your mind, and they get you telling you.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, can I rewind this?
Right.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
At that point, it's too late.
So you're saying for both people, it's important to honor where each one of you are at, even if you disagree.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Two different people. It's like you have a coin, there's two different sides of the same coin. That's what's happening in a relationship.
Okay.
You're talking about the same thing, but you have two different experiences. And the growth opportunity for me, and I think both of us, has been just because the other person's coming from a different place, it doesn't make them wrong. It's not about right or wrong, good or bad. It's about, it's different, and how do we honor the differences, the differentness and differences, and come together and utilize what both of us brought to the table in terms of strengths and resources, and approach it in a higher way so that we have a more effective and loving outcome.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect.
Now I know we started a little bit late,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to take a little bit more time with you guys, if it's okay, because I have one more question. I think that's very important for folks, especially people who are not only in committed relationships, but they have families.
Yeah.
What's the importance, and we can just start here, what's the importance of emotional intelligence when it comes to the children in the family dynamic?
Getting to know, I'll start off. Getting to know children as unique and different human beings who want to connect in some very specific kinds of ways. No matter what's going on with the parents, they still need a consistency of warmth.
Mm.
They need consistency of safety. So if there's something going on with the parents and they're arguing and that kind of thing, kids do not feel safe. So they need to be in an environment where they know that they're going to be okay. They need to feel like they're seen. They need to feel like they're heard. They need to feel supported and know that they're going to be okay as they grow into and develop into teenagers and adults.
Wow.
That's my
Wow.
summary.
Right.
What about you, Dan?
Well, I've heard, Melva and I, all of us in one way or the other, been involved in the educational system. And one of the things that kids used to say to me was, the only time my parents speak to me is when they think I've done something wrong.
Mm. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So that could be very, very self-deflating to children. And so children also need to know and be reinforced by their parents that you're okay.
Mm.
Even if there's something that you do that I wish you had not done, that doesn't mean that you are a total mess up.
Okay.
That there are parts of you, there are things about you that I respect and love and appreciate, and that I support.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you mean separate the behavior
yes,
from the core of who the person is.
absolutely.
And you're talking about that. That's when you're talking about when there's behaviors that you do not that you don't want to tolerate in the home. That's when the boundaries come up and you teach.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
2 yeses for every no. So because children need to know why there's a no. So the sentence that we usually share with parents, don't do this, and don't do this because they need to know the threat to their safety or what have you. Do this instead. Give them a couple of things to do instead so that they learn the proper behavior.
Gotcha.
But many people have been socialized to just focus on, no, don't do that. And so there's no information for the child, so they don't know how to grow from having new information and become competent in whatever area that is.
And raise their emotional intelligence so that they get all this dynamic information around how to deal with their feelings about any situation and any relationship.
That's true. And the other thing for children, parents, whether they're together or not, they need to be in a safe space when they're around the children.
Mm.
So wherever they don't see eye to eye, wherever they have difficulties, that is not to be attended to in front of the children because they scare them. And we learn, and so many people have said this over the years, they lose a part of who they are when they are strapped with those kinds of stress and pressure and that kind of impact.
Wow. With the time remaining, I'd like to ask each one of you, and I'll start with you, Dad. What what would be one important thought that you would give the viewers right now around something that you could take away from today about emotional intelligence? What would be one thought that comes to mind for you?
Know thyself. And the way that you know yourself is by being in touch with all of you. And all of you includes what your emotions are, what inspires you, what are your goals, your objectives in life, all of it. So it's really like know thyself. And I forgot who said that. I'm quoting somebody that I can't even.
I think it's in the scriptures.
Yeah. Okay. Whoever said I think was a good thought. Because the better I know me, the better I function personally, and the better I function in relationship.
What about you, Mom, before we get to some questions?
And support you along your life journey.
What about you, Mom, before we get to some questions?
Know your purpose. Know your purpose for being in a relationship, and include, if it works for you, that part of that purpose is to be your best self and to show up as your best self as best you can in every situation.
Wow. Thank you, guys. I got some questions. Would you like to answer some questions from the audience?
Sure.
And I just want to let the Soulivity family know, I mean, typically we keep this a little bit shorter, but this is such an important subject that I wanted to kind of extend it a little bit tonight so we could dive a little bit deeper. In fact, we're going to do a companion show to this next month with Jesse and Melva, so you don't want to miss that. So I have one question from Greg in Houston. Hey, Greg. How you doing, bro?
Hi.
Hey.
He wants to know, how do you explain to a 7-year-old what emotional intelligence is? It's a good question. What is it to a 7-year-old?
To a 7-year-old. So actually, to a 7-year-old, you just do it. And here's how you do it.
Okay.
Wherever that 7-year-old is showing up, whenever they're speaking and expressing themselves, to put on a hat of curiosity and really hear them out and where they're coming from. So one of the tools that we use in our work and with each other is this process called mirroring, reflective listening. And just keep asking, repeating back and asking until they're done. Wow, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. And then they'll open up and they'll tell you more. And then that is how they feel seen and heard.
Gotcha.
I think it's also important to appreciate age appropriateness. Okay, because a 7-year-old is not mentally has not developed to the point where they understand you and your reasoning and making logical decisions and things of that nature. So what you have to do, I think, in addition to just to add a footnote to what you said, is I think you have to model it for the kids. Let them see it. And little by little, they will learn it. So as they get older and they want to, they see the success that you've had as an adult, they say, oh, I want to emulate that.
Yeah.
Wow. So Greg, just model it for now.
Right.
And my guess is later in life, as they get older and gain more education, knowledge, experience, that kind of thing, then you can maybe go into a discussion. You know, that thing that I was doing back when you were 7 years old, that was emotional. I was helping you increase your emotional intelligence.
Right.
Explain to it. Okay, great. Great.
And then you can also add to that later on is that I've also been open for you to get to know me too, and how I function in this world.
Okay, we have another question from Vanessa. I think it's a funny one. She said, "Can you guys come live with her for a few months?"
Hey, Vanessa.
I think a lot of people would want that. Just stay here. Jesse, we got a room. Just stay right here. You don't have to go anywhere.
Do you know that people ask us in the counseling, and when we do the workshop, and we introduce them to the tools, and they start using the tools, it's like, oh, please come home with us.
Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you, Mom and Dad. Thanks, Jesse and Melva, for joining us tonight. On this extended version of Soulivity Live. I think everyone who's watching really appreciate what you've had to share about emotional intelligence, so that we all can have, better and happy lives. I mean, and better relationships, both personal and professional, because I think that what you're sharing can also be used professionally in careers.
Absolutely.
Where you're mirroring coworkers and that kind of thing, where you can probably disarm some situations through that way.
Yeah.
I remind everybody that, again, this is a very important subject, and we're going to have Jesse and Melva back next month, so we can continue this discussion. So don't miss it. All right, don't miss it. It's going to be good. We may extend it like we did tonight, so we can really get some good questions in and answer some questions. So I'd say until then, this is Brian Westley. Oh no, Dad's got one more thing. Go for it, Dad.
Yeah. If anybody listening and hearing this presentation we made have any question question whether or not the things that we're sharing with you work or not, we would just suggest to them that they look at you, because you are a manifestation of the things that we have tried to teach others.
Wow.
And we're quite proud of you.
Wow.
And that's the truth.
See, this is what happens when your parents are guests, but they're also experts in relationships. They make you blush and everything on streams. Thanks, guys. Well, I'll just say until then, this is Brian Wesley Johnson saying to all of you, all around the world, thanks for joining us tonight. And I'm wishing you love, passion, and of course, happy living. Good night.
Good night.